by AfriForum's Deputy CEO, Ernst Roets. He joins us via our Skype line this evening. Ernst, good evening and thanks for your time. Firstly, how much credit do you take for the view that has been expressed by Donald Trump?
Well, I think certainly a lot of things contributed to the views expressed by the President of the United States. We went to the United States recently to garner support and to lobby to get support against farm murders in South Africa and against expropriation without compensation. And we are very grateful for the fact that the people we have spoken with have also said that they want to take this issue further. And there was broad consensus that what needs to happen is the President of the USA needs to make a statement. So I think it would be disingenuous to try to claim that it was only AfriForum. I think there was a lot of things that contributed, but we also believe that our visit to the United States did have an impact in terms of the President making this statement.
As far as content is concerned, how much of what he said is a reflection of what you said to the people with whom you met while you were in the US?
Yeah, I know what you want to do now. You want me to say that it reflects what he said, what we said, and then you're going to say that the tweet contains false information and therefore there's a propaganda campaign.
Ernst, all I would like you to do is just answer questions. I think I asked you a pretty simple question. So before insinuating what you think I'm trying to say, maybe just answer what I'm actually asking you, which is how much of what President Donald Trump has said is a reflection of what you said to the groups that you met with in the US?
What he said that is a reflection of what we said is that farm attacks and farm killings is completely disproportionate and it's a major crisis in South Africa that needs to be addressed. And also that expropriation of land without compensation could potentially create a disastrous situation for South Africa.
And certainly when you look at it, to the extent that you raise issues of land and farm seizures, as he's put it in his tweet, and large-scale farm killings, as he's describing it, would you say that even the tone is similar to what you have been telling those that you've been meeting with, or has it been taken a few steps further?
I'm not sure what that means when you ask me if the tone reflects what AfriForum is saying. I can tell you what our position is, and we can talk about that, but I don't know what it means to comment on the tone of the tweet.
So what I'm saying is, what Donald Trump has said is that he's described it as land and farm seizures that are taking place and large-scale farm killings. Now, is that what you've said to those you've been meeting with? Have you told them that that is in fact what is happening in South Africa?
What we have told the people who we've met with is that the government has taken a decision that property has to be expropriated without compensation and that there is a process happening. But despite the fact that there is a process, the Deputy President, David Mabuza, has said that if white people don't voluntarily hand over their property, there would be violence. And that the State President has said, well, by this time, more than 10 times in public, basically regardless of what happens during these public consultation meetings, that they are going to expropriate property without compensation. So the whole process that's currently being followed is just window dressing at the moment.
But to a large extent, the views expressed by the US President made it sound as if whatever concerns you may have about the process that's unfolding, that is in fact what is happening in South Africa right now. Were you surprised by that?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
The tweet doesn't speak about there will be land and farm seizures. It says that there are land and farm seizures taking place.
So I was right in my speculation about where you were heading with this. I can comment to you, I can say to you what we discussed. I was on Fox News and the interview there for everyone to see. There are cases. We do know about the list of expropriation test cases that has been identified, although government is denying that. We do know that farms that are on that list are being targeted for expropriation. Now they are saying, no, it's not expropriation without compensation. It's expropriation with compensation below market value, which is exactly the point, because that's step one. So step one is to expropriate below market value, and step two is to expropriate without compensation. So that is already happening, but it's a process. It's not something that's happening as a whole immediately.
Is your approach to this entire matter to try and cause hysteria as it has been received and even analyzed by some as such?
Wow. Is your approach in interviewing people to cause hysteria?
Perhaps if you just answer the question, Ernst.
Well, I think with all due respect, but that's a ridiculous question. How can you ask someone, is your approach to cause hysteria? Of course, we're not trying to cause hysteria. There is hysteria because people are targeted. People's private property is being targeted. And we know that that has been tried in Zimbabwe and Venezuela and in the Soviet Union and in communist China and in Cambodia. And in all of those cases, it has failed. So people should be very concerned about what's happening in South Africa. I think asking someone, are you trying to cause hysteria is sort of, it's not the point.
The South African government has responded to this saga that we're seeing unfold, and by saying that President Trump's views are narrow and divisive. Do you share that view?
His views in general, or particularly his tweet?
In the tweets, apologies, the tweet in particular.
No, the fact of the matter is that people are being attacked and killed and tortured on South African farms. The South African government is in denial about this, or at least they would only confirm that there is a problem to a very small extent. They don't want to prioritize these attacks. The attacks are completely disproportionate, not only in the extent at which it is taking place, but also in the levels of brutality and violence. And then, of course, the attacks are very unique in the sense that government is completely ignoring this or trying to downplay the extent or lying about this. They would say, no, it's only because of labor disputes. Well, that's already been disproven. So there is a very divisive situation in South Africa, and I think we don't expect this president of the USA to be an expert on local issues in South Africa, but I think he's right to be concerned about expropriation without compensation in South Africa, and he's right to be concerned about farm murders in South Africa.
So when you say you don't expect him to be an expert, does it mean that you're leaving room that part of what he's saying may not be entirely true?
No, well, the point is, if you read what he said on Twitter, he said that he has instructed his head of the State Department to investigate and to monitor the situation. I think that's the appropriate thing to do. If you are concerned about something, to say, this is something that we need to look into, and that is why he has given instruction to his minister to look into this.
There are obviously economic ramifications for all these statements that are currently being made. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go onto the different social media platforms where you'll find the views of just ordinary South Africans also being expressed. People are saying that AfriForum is deliberately damaging the reputation of South Africa. Have you thought about the economic ramifications that come out of perhaps how you are framing what is happening in South Africa and subsequently telling it to those with whom you are meeting and engaging with?
Well, firstly, social media is not a reflection of how society in general feels. If you want to determine that, you need to look at opinion surveys by credible research organizations. And secondly, it's not the campaign against expropriation that's causing alarm and that has economic ramification. It's the campaign for expropriation of private property. That's the reason why people are being concerned. When we are raising awareness about this problem, yes, there might be effects on the markets, but that's because people are concerned about expropriation without compensation. They're not concerned about some civil rights organization that's going to destroy the economy. We don't have the power to do that. The president has the power to do that, and he seems to be using his power, and he seems to be succeeding in achieving that.
So the fact that you said that you were going to specifically speak to investors about potentially withdrawing investment out of South Africa, if this is the policy, you don't see that as potentially having economic ramifications?
That's not what we said. We said that we would be speaking to international investors to put pressure on the South African government not to continue with this policy. There's a major difference between the two. We're not calling for disinvestment. The fact of the matter is there would be disinvestment if expropriation without compensation goes through. The indications are there. We can already see the economic ramification in terms of people not investing in their own properties anymore. People don't know if their property is secure, therefore they're not farming anymore, or they don't want to develop their property. All of those indicators are already there. We have not called for disinvestment. We have called on investors to put pressure on the South African government.
And if they don't?
if they don't put pressure on the South African government.
Yes.
Well, then the South African, well, I think obviously there's a big campaign and there's a lot that has to be done and that could be done to address this. The fact of the matter is, if this policy goes through, then just this morning, Ronald Lamola of the ANC's National Executive Committee again confirmed that they regard Hugo Chavez as a hero. Hugo Chavez is the person who destroyed Venezuela. Venezuela was the wealthiest country in Southern America, on the continent. Now it's probably the poorest country on earth. They have like 1,000,000% inflation. And the ANC regards him as a hero. The ANC is on record saying that they regard Robert Mugabe as a hero. They regard Fidel Castro as a hero. They regard the leaders of the Soviet Union as heroes. They even wanted to name one of the main streets in Pretoria after Mao Zedong, who killed like 60 million people. And these are the people that the ANC regards as heroes. Then you can look at the policies that have been implemented in South Korea and many of those countries, and Singapore, where those countries have been lifted out of poverty, out of the ashes, and to become wealthy countries. And those policies are exactly the policies that the ANC believes are evil, that they don't want to implement. And those policies are about protecting property rights and government not trying to micromanage the people's lives and not trying to micromanage civil society.
All right, Ernst Roets, that's where we leave it for tonight. Thanks for your time.